This presentation is about our experience building an app for a startup company named Twisty Systems. The founder of Twisty Systems, Ian Sliney, will take a central role in this story. His vision, tenacity, and free-spiritedness helped steer our team through many highs and lows, culminating with a launch date that happened to coincide with the biggest health crisis in 100 years. But as we'll see, our current situation also has the potential to open up new opportunities. What's the product? The Twisty app uses mathematical analysis to identify the twistiest and most interesting roads in the world. It's a navigation app, but one that focuses on the journey as well as the destination. The twistiest roads are returned relative to your own location, so you'll always get the most interesting roads in your specified radius. I'm Bobby Pantel from CC Pace Systems, who partnered with Twisty to build the app. I've been developing products for a couple of decades, and almost all of that time has involved agile development. I'm a huge proponent of delivering value to customers as quickly as possible and iterating based on their feedback. For Twisty, I want to describe our experience in the context of the lean startup methodology. This methodology was first introduced by Eric Ries in his book, The Lean Startup. A key aspect of this methodology is to adopt a process that can quickly get you feedback on your business idea. Each part of your business idea is treated as a hypothesis, and your minimum viable product, or MVP, is the minimum that you need to build to test that hypothesis. The heart of the lean startup process is an engine for continuous innovation. This is done through a build, measure, learn cycle. This diagram shows the input for each stage. You can reverse the cycle to narrow down the scope of what you need to build. You first ask, what do I need to learn? Then, how will I measure it? And finally, what's the minimum I need to build to obtain the measurement? Back to Twisty. So what was included in the first MVP? Ian focused on the top 4 items from his research around what drivers want, focusing on drivers that enjoy the ride. Rapid identification of twisty roads anywhere in the world, a simple user interface to navigate them, including verbal and visual feedback, and rerouting back to the chosen route if the driver deviates from it. We did face some issues when building our MVP. Rapid road identification wasn't rapid at all. It required a dismantling and rebuild of the AI analysis, which ultimately improved the time from hours to seconds. For verbal and visual navigation feedback, we relied on a robust SDK from Mapbox, but we had to force the app to override Mapbox and follow our instructions if the driver deviated from the chosen route. Remember that lean startup requires getting to an MVP as quickly as possible. In actuality, we ended up spending a lot of time trying to get to perfection, delaying the release to both beta testers and the public. When we finally settled on a launch date, we chose March 2020. So yeah, that happened. 2 days before launch, 41 states issued stay-at-home orders. March was supposed to be our opportunity to get some feedback on the app. We lined up a group of beta testers at a local motorcycle dealer. We prepared a slick social media campaign. We had done customer discovery research with George Mason University's Innovation Assistance Program for startups. Our pricing model was subscription-based with a 14-day trial and priced below the nearest competitors. But the pandemic forced us to delay the product release until May. The initial results were less than stellar. Overall, user numbers were low and the conversion rate to a subscription model for those users was about 20%. Even worse, some of these users never got to use the app before the trial ran out. Feedback revealed that they were less likely to commit because of uncertainty. And let's face it, uncertainty is the only guarantee these days. In a lean startup, your experiments return results and you compare them to your hypothesis. At that point, you either pivot or persevere. This was a time to pivot. So we removed all barriers to access, no more subscription model. We also focused on cost-cutting measures to reduce our operational costs, which we'll delve into in a bit. The results were very promising. In October, the freemium version was released and we monitored users closely. Uptake has increased and extended significantly, and we're gaining more insight into repeat use. After reaching out to our customers and competitors, we've gained some important insights into the market. You can see from the map that use has spread nicely throughout the US. But very importantly, more users equals more feedback. This allows more hypotheses, more experiments, and more customer engagement. Ian started out with a specific vision for the Twisty app, and it took some time to realize that it was close, but not completely accurate. To quote him, "It was time to build what the customers want, not what I think they need." For operational costs, we had originally provisioned an Amazon EC2 VM instance with 2 vCPUs and 8 GB of memory. We also used Elastic Block Store general-purpose solid-state drives. This server handled both the API and database, including our entire geospatial dataset. Given the delay in user response, these costs were enough to spark some concerns about long-term viability. So we hatched a plan to incrementally migrate to a pay-as-you-go serverless cloud architecture. We moved the database off of the VM and into an Amazon relational database service. Then we moved our Python API and compute code into AWS Lambda functions and API gateway endpoints. We shut down the VM and waited for the costs to drop. Surprise, our costs almost doubled. In our efforts to migrate as safely as possible, we made several copies of our EBS volumes, so even though we shut down our VMs, the multiple provisioned EBS volumes were incurring huge costs. It took us about a week to realize what was happening. Basically, when Ian saw his AWS bill and asked, guys, what's going on? We then cleared up the extra volumes. Now our AWS operational costs are 75% less than what they were when we launched, with the opportunity for more savings as we move off of VMs. It's a pay-as-you-go model, but the incremental costs of adding more users is very low, and we can optimize functionality at a more granular level. So what are some key takeaways about building a product? There was too much time spent on building and not enough on learning. It took time to pivot because it took a long time to get the app in customers' hands. When we finally released, customer feedback confirmed a lot of our background research, but also generated new ideas. They wanted things like CarPlay integration, automatic route generation, and social networking tools. Twisty Systems continues to search for the right balance between marketing and engineering. According to Ian, you don't want to market too heavily at the beginning because you may kill the product before it's ready. Focus on the smallest cohort of early adopters before you go too far. Market your product to that group so you can test your concept and gauge interest. By listening and reacting to customers' true needs, you can overcome founder syndrome. Now the path is much clearer. There are more things to learn, more hypotheses to test, and more features to build. We see Twisty driving as a way of getting out of the house in a safe way. More Twisties, fewer people, and less close contact. We have an opportunity to find joy in the journey and discovery of new and interesting places. So here's to 2021.